I was taught that you work hard and you rest when you rest once the work is done, and the work is never done. And so there's a moment, and I'd love to hear your light bulb moment. There's a moment when you go, oh, if I don't take care of this body, I have nothing else. It doesn't matter how successful I am. It doesn't matter how great my patients feel in the clinic. If I have back pain that's so hard that I can't unload the dishwasher, that my body will fail me if I don't take care of it. It will give me these messages. And so when did you, if you don't mind me asking this question, because I have you in front of me, so I can ask someone wise. That's how you learn. When did you figure out, like, yes, I need to work hard and efficiently, but also self-care is important? When did that pop into your consciousness?
Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people around the world watching us, they say, we know where Canada is, and British Columbia on the west coast, right? Right. And then we have a big city called Vancouver. And where are we in regards to Vancouver? We are 500 miles, or for our European friends, 800 kilometers north of Vancouver, and in the center of British Columbia, north-south, east-west, big province. Now, the other part that we have lots of friends around here in the Prince George region, is black bears, grizzly bears, caribou, deer, wolves, foxes, you name it, we have them all, and we call it paradise. Today we got a very interesting guest, and her name is Elizabeth Bruckner. And Elizabeth is an author, has written a book which she will share with us. It's right behind her, actually, Homesteader Mindset, a book that will transform the way you view self-sufficiency, and given you the tools and practical tips needed for a more meaningful life. How more appropriate could it get, especially today with all the things that are going on. Elizabeth, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, John. This is a real pleasure.
So, share with us and our friends from around the world, where are you from and where are you located, and what is your background and training? And you made reference to a number of things that you have done. You have a master in science and acupuncture, for one, and oriental medicine, and a number of other things. Share with us how it all started and where.
Well, I definitely puzzled together my life a lot like you have puzzled together your life. Like whatever passion interests you, you take it and run with it. That is kind of how I have harnessed my life together into one big, beautiful, amazing life. I am originally from the East Coast in a state called New Jersey, which is south of New York.
Correct.
And part of my family of origin is kind of important too, because you and I have some similarities there as well. My mother was a war refugee with her family from at the end of World War II, and moved from Belarus all around in refugee camps throughout Europe, and then eventually landed in Ohio and was an indentured servant, which is kind of like the farmer paid the ticket and then there was a debt on their head and they kept accruing debt as they were working for pennies on the dollar. And a church, a Russian Orthodox church in New Jersey, paid for their freedom. And then that is why I was born and raised in New Jersey. So it's a fascinating story. And I say this because my DNA remembers the stories of famine and war and the unknown. Although I grew up in a very affluent society, right? There's always been bread on the shelves, et cetera. We'll get to that in a minute. That's how I became a homesteader. I moved by myself, which is also similar to you, in my 20s. I decided I needed to go and live in California and give it a go. So I had $700 in my pocket, a car. At that time, there was no Google or, navigations on your cell phone, and I drove across country by myself. I took 3 beautiful weeks to see the country, which I would recommend to everyone because it's quite remarkable. North America is it's beautiful. And people don't often, they kind of poo-poo it, but it's amazing what you get to see when you drive through the different geographic areas.
I agree.
When have you done some road trips before?
Yes, I have. Yeah. Not
I think it's good
enough.
for the soul. Yeah,
Yeah.
not enough. Me
Yeah.
too. Me
Yeah.
too. And so when I got here, I was a singer songwriter, and then I went into a few other industries. And in my 30s, I thought, this is not working for me. What I'm doing is not working for me. I need to find some sort of career that's stable and that's fulfilling. And I wanted to do healthcare. I thought everybody needs healthcare. This is a good thing. And so I took a year and I interviewed a number of healthcare practitioners. I considered becoming a nurse practitioner, a physical therapist, an occupational therapist. And the last person that I had interviewed was an acupuncturist. And although I don't think I have a drop of Chinese DNA or a drop of Chinese blood in my body. I was very drawn to it because it was something that I could do into my 80s. You can easily poke a needle in someone up until your 80s. It's very good for your body. And I liked the holistic aspect because I'd been dipping my toe in my 20s, stepping away from big pharma, stepping away from antibiotics and the overuse, which in my generation, they were giving them away like candy. And I just slowly started to morph into what does a holistic practitioner look like? So I jumped into a master's degree and it was phenomenal. But what you really learn in medicine, you learn once you start working in a clinic. And so after 10,000 treatments, that's when I was like, okay, I can understand. The first premise is that the body knows how to heal itself if we help it. Like we don't have to do much. You've talked about this before in different podcasts that the body can heal. We just need to give it the right sleep, vitamin D, get out in the sunshine, and eat well. Like food truly is medicine. And so this was all in the back of my mind when I was treating patients. But what I found is, especially, and I'm going to speak to Americans because that was the population that I was seeing most of the time. Americans tend to go to a healthcare practitioner and say, please heal me. And then they go home and do whatever they were doing. And I was having trouble with patient compliance and I didn't understand why. I didn't understand why they wanted to get better. They were in immense pain. They felt better in the clinic. The treatment was fantastic, but any homework that I gave them, they were not able to make those changes. And it was baffling to me because these folks were CEOs. They were, raising healthy kids. They were people that were successful in their lives, and yet they weren't doing this. And that patient compliance really all boiled down to habit learning and creating routine versus willpower. And so then I started out of sheer pleasure. And I promise you, this does have to do with homesteading. I started to learn languages. I thought, you know what? I was really good at languages in school, although I never spoke it. I'm going to learn French. And for absolute pleasure, I started learning French. And during my language learning, I learned how to create habits and systems that made learning languages fun and efficient and amazing. People kept saying to me, "Oh my gosh, if only I could do that." And I felt like the same the same excuses that the patients were giving me, I don't have time, it's too expensive and it's too complicated. People were also giving me in terms of language learning. So I then the pandemic hit and suddenly our shelves were bare at the grocery stores and all of those stories of famine and for me it was dealing with communism in my family. It was coming to fruition and it scared the bejesus out of me. And I came home and said to my husband, I'm really nervous. There's no ginger and garlic, no organic ginger and garlic. It's two important herbs. And he said, well, why don't we grow our own food? And we live in the suburbs. And as you can see, some that are listening on the podcast won't, but I don't make homemade clothes. I don't have a rifle in my hand. That's not what homesteading is. The
Yeah.
modern homesteading is very different. It's getting back to traditional skills. And so from there, I started learning to homestead without knowing what a homesteader was.
So, how long ago is that when between you and your husband said, okay, why not grow our own? Because I remember the period that you're referring to, that is something that we heard about but didn't experience. And people in Eastern Europe are very used to in a lot of ways. And all of a sudden, it is happening here. All the things that you expect are there are not there. And all of a sudden, you say, I have to change direction.
That was actually in 2020. And I will say, I think the light bulb for me was I realized that I was outsourcing my health, I was outsourcing my food. And I think that I don't I don't have a cow in the back of my yard. So it's not like I've suddenly completely gone off grid, but I just wanted to have a bit of empowerment. There's a saying that one of my very wise friends says, which is the prescription to anxiety is action. And so I was feeling uneasy. And would it have mattered if I made, basil and tomatoes in my backyard? Like, is that going to save me from starvation? No, but it is going to wake up my innate resourcefulness. And I think that is like when you talk about surviving the war, and as a child going, and you were the only, your age group was the only age group that wouldn't get shot, so you would go and like pick up the resources. That's innate resourcefulness. That is when the rubber hits the road. And so I think that because I come from that, and I come from, my father's side was also had a bit of poverty in it, although he grew up in Philadelphia. I have like this innate scrappiness, like we can get stuff done. And when you kind of take back some of that power and say, I have the power to do something, then suddenly you notice when in your community there's someone else that can do something. For example, there's someone that knows how to make cheese, there's someone that has a cow, I have basil and tomatoes, and suddenly we can start creating this very empowered community and getting out of our tiny little house where we don't say hello to our neighbors, where we go put the car in garage, and that's madness. We need more community. We need more building and believing in our bodies and in our fellow humans.
The other comment that you made, which correct me if I said it correctly,
Mm-hmm.
is habit versus willpower.
Yeah.
And to make that transition that you can in a way and that everything is possible, that approach, the foundation was with your family. The foundation also, you saw part of it when you initially grew up because through your parents, that willpower made things change for them. and and where we have gone in a general sense is that we rely so much on going to the grocery stores, and we don't even think about growing anything. My grandparents, way back in Holland, that they had, I don't know how much land, but it was less than an acre, and maybe even half of that. They grew virtually everything that they needed, and then they had and then the only time they go to the store is to pick up spices or salt or something like that, and for the rest they grew it all.
Yes. And okay, so there's two things here. The first is nature is remarkably abundant. So people think, oh my gosh, that must have taken them hours to do. You throw a few seeds down, you use your vegetable scraps to make compost. It can take up to 5 minutes a day. I often ignore my garden for a very long time, and I can still walk out there and get food because I've set it up in a way with perennials, things you don't have to plant. Chickens aren't that difficult to take care of. So that is the first premise, is that this idea that, oh, we couldn't possibly, and someone might be listening going, well, I live in an apartment in the city. Well, 90% of the food that I buy is from farmers that I know on a first name basis. So I go to the farmer's market, and now I know Sarah who sells me eggs, and I know what her eggs are like, and I can go visit their farm. And it's stepping aside of that middleman. When I go to the grocery store, it's usually like 5 items every other week because I'm just not eating the processed foods that I used to rely on. And that's another traditional skill, like learning to cook. So when you talk about willpower versus routine, willpower is finite. And I think that anyone talking to you, John, would be like, well, you obviously have incredible willpower because you've created this amazing, so many businesses, and you started from scratch, and you didn't have a cent in your pocket, and you started working in a lumber yard, and then you created your own lumber yard. And then on top of it, like, you're a bodybuilder, over 80, the oldest body. I just texted my best friend. I'm like, you won't believe who I'm talking to today. The oldest bodybuilder in North America. And so people will think like, oh, you must have incredible willpower. But I would say that if we step back, like when people think, oh my gosh, how can you learn a language? Like, how do you have time to do that? Or get a master's degree in your 30s and 40s when everyone else is 20 something? It's not the willpower. That's usually the inspiration, like, oh, I'm going to do something. Oh, okay, I might as well like kind of peek and look and see what it is. But it's the routine, it's creating those tiny habits. When you get up in the morning, you have habits that are set. You go to the gym. That is part of what you do no matter what. And I think one of the pieces that fall apart in American society is that self-care is just completely relegated to something like a luxury, and that's not true. I have a friend that was like, "Oh, she had a terrible experience at the school where she works at. She had 3 children seriously injured in the same week. It was a lot for her nervous system. You know, she's got a tight budget and she went and got a massage and she's like, "I just felt like I needed to be touched, but I also felt like this was a huge luxury." And I said, "No, this is body work. Like this is the way you're going to get some of those stress hormones out of your body." And so when we start realizing, and for me, and probably you as well, I was taught that you work hard and you rest when you rest once the work is done, and the work is never done. And so there's a moment, and I'd love to hear your light bulb moment. There's a moment when you go, oh, if I don't take care of this body, I have nothing else. It doesn't matter how successful I am. It doesn't matter how great my patients feel in the clinic. If I have back pain that's so hard that I can't unload the dishwasher, that my body will fail me if I don't take care of it. It will give me these messages. And so when did you, if you don't mind me asking this question, because I have you in front of me, so I can ask someone wise. That's how you learn. When did you figure out like, yes, I need to work hard and efficiently, but also self-care is important? When did that pop into your consciousness?
So I'm 80, nearly 85. I will be 85 November the 1st, so 3, 4 months from now. 85 years young, I call it.
Hmm.
So there is always, as you already referred to, a trigger moment that all of a sudden makes you look at what am I doing, what direction am I going. I'm also very fortunate. My wife is, we have been together for nearly 42 years, and
Wow.
she is vegetarian. And so, and I didn't listen quite as good as I should have all along, although I was doing fairly well, but
Hmm.
not like her. And so then in 2008, when I was already 68 years old, I got a case of diverticulitis. And for our guest watching us, I always say I'm not a doctor. I'm simply saying what I had never even heard of it. Diverticulitis is that if you have pain on your right side, it's probably your appendix, we say, and if it is on the left side, it's potentially your colon, and it could well be diverticulitis if you go to a doc, likely. And in my case, it ruptured, and so and
Oh,
extremely painful where the toxins go through your body, and you must attend to it fairly quickly, otherwise it could potentially kill you. And
yes.
so and I have a high threshold for pain, which is not helpful either. And
Mm.
in any event, by the time I got to the doc, I got an operation. They took 20 centimeters out of my colon, and the doc the following morning said, I came that close. So that kind of put on the alarm. So I started looking more closer at diet, following what my wife was doing already. And she
Mm-hmm.
was very meticulous about all the things that you were talking about,
Mm-hmm.
and recycling and all of that sort of thing, and being cautious about food and all of those things. So I knew then I would have to change my diet even further than I did already. So I started that in 2009 when I recovered from my operation and for diverticulitis. And then at the same time, I knew that I was very fit. I was
Mm-hmm.
active, but not as active as I could and should be. And I knew, and I was kind of doing what a lot of other people do. They go At the end of the year, they say, I'm going to do this, that, and the other thing. And then at the end, they say, and I'm going to buy a membership to a gym.
Mm-hmm.
And then they buy the membership, and 2 weeks later, they find 100 reasons why they are too busy to go to the gym. So I knew I had to change that. So in 2009, and at 69 years old already, I started to become much more conscientious about diet, and then I was starting to go to the gym with a trainer. And after about 6 years in the gym and being very committed to it, it's
Mm-hmm.
priority to me over everything. I must work out and go to the gym. And somebody came up to us, myself and my trainer, and said, "Hey, John, have you ever thought about competing?" And I said, "Me? Really? Yeah." And I said, "Why not?" And so it gives me a goal. So that's what I did. And so I started training, and then I competed in northern British Columbia for bodybuilding and physique. That qualified me for the provincials, about the same, and then it qualified me for the nationals and the Arnolds. And then the COVID came, and so it all kind of set us back a bit. And now I'm back again training for the Arnolds. And here's a picture of my book that I wrote, Living Young, Dying Old. Picture of me, actually, the way I am today at
Impressive.
nearly 85. I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. And so it gives me a commitment to, as you said, an objective, as you did with learning French.
Mm-hmm.
You wanted to do that, and the willpower, and then the routine developed, and that's what I did. The other amazing part about it is that I do all this shopping for both my wife and myself. So if I go to the grocery store, I always go to the outside of the grocery store, because I don't want to go in the aisles, because that's where all the processed foods are. And if I don't know what is in it, then it's highly unlikely that it is good for us. And again,
Yes.
so that changed my life. And as you already said, that there is nothing more precious than the body that you have, and it wants to be healthy and fit, and all you have to do, not is not easy necessarily, but you have to make that commitment. It wants to be fit and healthy, and whatever you put into your body, you have to understand what it is, so it helps that process. And then at the end of the day, even in, that's why I wrote the book, How to Thrive in Your Mid 80s, is that even at 85, it is not the number, but quality of life that is important. And that means everything about me, as in you and the people watching us, from your mind to your
Mm-hmm.
body, and treat it well. And as you already said, for me, what is important, vitamin D is important in some form or fashion. And then the other one is sleep.
Yeah.
7 to 9 hours a night is important. The other part that is important, uh, stay fit, and include strength training is important as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other part, obviously, is diet and healthy living. And then add to that as well, we are very fortunate in a way, in a smaller community. There are people that are very proactive in growing foods and understanding what it is. And the better we understand where it comes from and how it has been produced, the more beneficial it will be for us. So that is now part of my life, and my wife already was there before that. But so that's what we do.
You named a few things here. Firstly, the fact that you've had a wife of 40 years. And I think that it can really stabilize a person to have relations, close relations with people for many, many years, many spanning over the decades to keep them healthy. The other thing you said is time management. Like you make your healthcare, your preventative healthcare, you make that a priority. And years ago, I was always reading books on productivity. I was like, I'm just not getting done what I need to get done. And what I realized is I really needed a book on priorities. And so you are one of the inspirations for octogenarians of what is possible. You can live with, no medication or relatively little medication, as opposed to some of my family members and patients that I see that are on 14 medications, and the doctor doesn't ever say, stop eating refined sugar, cut down on the carbs, eat real food. I will tell you, I promise you that real food tastes better when it's very simply made, and it's very satiating. Like your body settles when it has actual nutrients, as opposed to processed food, which is chemically altered to make you want to eat more. It's never going to satisfy you. That's the scam. Like they want you to eat not just one potato chip, right? That was a commercial years ago. Well, they made it chemically altered to do that. And so these ideas, and then lastly, the goal that you talked about, like that goal for, I'm going to try I'm going to try competing. Let me see what bodybuilding does for me. You've now created a new community. You've created a new inspiration. You really are living a vibrant life in your 80s. And this is possible for all people. And I want to say one last thing, because there might be somebody listening that's not in their 80s. Maybe they're around 50 or 40 or 30 and they've got young kids and they're like, there's no way I have time for this. What I will say is, at the moment that you had nearly fatal diverticulitis, at that moment, your wife was fearing losing you. So had you not taken care of had you not taken care of yourself, you could have died and then she'd have no one. The same for a young mom with little kids. Yes, naps are necessary, resting are necessary for the mama. Because if you do not take care of yourself, your children will not have a healthy mom, grandmom, aunt, uncle, brother, sister. And so when I dealt with a chronic illness, that was what woke me up. Like, I can't be of service if I'm sick. What kind of community member do I want to be? Do I want to be someone that's consuming help? Or do I want to be somebody that's vital and vibrant and able to give to others as much as I receive?
And the other part about it, Elizabeth, is that I like it. I
Mm-hmm.
like to eat healthy food. I'm not interested in processed foods because they don't appeal to me. I don't know what is in it, but it doesn't take any effort for me not to make those choices. I want to know what it is, and it serves me well, and I enjoy it. The same as going to the gym. Is
Mm-hmm.
that the I go to the gym, do a lot of strength training because that's important for my body as well as cardio. But
Mm-hmm.
strength training is important as well, and especially when you get older. And it doesn't mean that you have to become a bodybuilder necessarily, but whatever motivates you is now, for a lot of people I know, and I'm always amazed. I write about it, I'm very proactive about it, that I don't see more individuals, respectfully, 50 and older, 60 and older in the gym. And a lot of times they either say they don't have time, or they don't like it, or it is difficult, or whatever reasons they have. Is that I know that once you make a commitment that that's part of your life and quality of life, and that's why I wrote the book, is this is possible. Not I'm not the exception. Doesn't mean that you
Mm-hmm.
have to be an Olympian or a bodybuilder, but to make that commitment. And then I get, every time I get people saying to me, "Oh my God, you look good," and all those kind of things. But
Mm-hmm.
it's quality of life. Even now, still, the what I do is I get up usually at 5:30 every morning. Uh, I always make my bed. I always think I'm late, and and I'm usually the first one there at work and the last one to leave, and I enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, there's that
so,
purpose. You have
quality
purpose.
of life is the
Mm-hmm.
most precious part that we have. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that people are putting it aside thinking, I'll get to it eventually. And you need to get to it now. And so when we say this, again, it sounds like, well, Elizabeth and John, you guys, you've been doing this for years, but you start somewhere. So for me, I had outsourced my food for so long that I really didn't cook at home up until my 40s at all, because I was raised by two working parents. lots of cereal, processed foods. That's what we ate because my parents weren't home. Like we basically raised ourselves. And so I always thought, well, if you were a busy career woman like me, you would also buy the baked chicken at the grocery store, which is better than fast food, but it's still, what oils are they putting on it? What kind of chicken is it? And so when I started to say, well, how am I going to start creating healthy food for my family? I started with going online and just looking for recipes that had no more than 3 steps. Like if it had more than 3 steps, and that includes like washing the chicken, putting some grease on it, then putting it in the oven. Like that is all that particular meal is made, or salad, right? Like salad dressing is so easy to make and people don't even realize it. But only 3 steps. I'm not going to be doing any wine reduction sauces. That's great, but that can be for my chef friends. And so I just started taking one little step at a time and finding the passion. For me, when I make a really good meal, my husband's pupils in his eyes turn into a heart shape. He gets super happy. And so that was very fulfilling to me. Like, oh, he's working a long day and I can provide something wonderful and nourishing for both of us and we can enjoy it. So I would always say like, "Great, tell me what you think about this. Was this a 9? Was this a 10?" And if we both had it above a 7, then we would have that as a repeat 3-step recipe. And from there I started to learn how to create. And I didn't realize that this was part of homesteading. Just starting with one little 5-minute habit. That's it. You don't have to change your whole life.
So, what is your husband's first name?
Chris.
Chris. So, you were lucky to have Chris that obviously is enjoying and supportive of what you are doing. And that comes down as to what you commented to earlier with my wife, Sharon. She is very proactive, and it took me a while to get there to the extent that she is. But the amazing part about it is that it is not complicated. It's easy, rewarding, and so what I say to a lot of friends that are contemplating on going to the gym and having difficulty to make that commitment, they say, once you don't have to start right away. Start walking, even a half an hour a day or 2 or 3 days a week, and gradually build it up. And then go to, especially for people that are older, but even 40, 50 years and older, do some strength training as well. Part of it you can do at home. Very, very easy, simple. But once you make the commitment, the amazing part will be, and I had that experience, I'm sure you did and have seen it, is saying, "Hey, Elizabeth," or "Hey, John, what are you doing? You look good, and you're so active and so much energy and doing so many things." And I say, well, it's lifestyle,
Yes.
really.
It's not a secret. I think the biggest secret is, how do we get there? And I think that starts with just figuring out what particular spoke in the wheel is of interest to you. So
Right.
you know, maybe the only thing you can think of is, okay, I'm going to move my body and I'm just going to step away from my desk at lunch and I'm going to take a walk around the block. And that's an incredible start, because
Exactly.
most people are eating at their desk and continuing to work and being the good worker, which is actually not the case. But just start that, and then maybe ask one of your coworkers to take a walk with you. Now you've got some accountability mixed in there. Or when I take a walk with my husband, we become accountability partners because we want to make sure that our dog gets a dog walk, right? That's a great
Exactly.
accountability partner. And then we
Exactly.
get to say hi to our community. And now we get to learn from our community members. When I walk by a really beautiful garden, I will often say, like, "Oh, what are you growing?" And now I'm creating community. And now we're swapping plants, and we're swapping. I mean, you have no idea how many plants in my garden were clipped off from another gardener that gave them to me because I was outside walking. Something as simple as walking that costs no money. It costs very little time if you do it during your lunch hour. And it can create incredible change, because once you start feeling better, you want to, well, what can I do now? If that's sky's the limit.
And that's once you will get to that point if you make the commitment, work your way through the challenges here and there that you said, well, I'm too busy. Before you know it, it's 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. No, you have to stay the course. And
Yeah.
what you will see then, what will happen on diet and exercise, is that it becomes part of your life. and you will enjoy it, and it is rewarding, so my suggestion is stay the course. Make the commitment, and then at the last decade in a lot of people's lives are the most difficult one, where
Mm,
they eat hands full of medicine
yes.
that they really don't know what it is. It just become a habit,
Hmm.
and so that then makes it even more difficult, and could create more problems than it fixes. That once you get to the commitment of enjoying it, then quality will follow.
Quality absolutely follows. As I said at the top of this episode, your body knows how to heal. If
Exactly.
we're not continually putting poisons in it, it will eventually heal. And one of the things that I'd love to leave one or many of your listeners with is this idea of habit stacking and habit chaining. So when I talked about, you said you get up in the morning and you at 5:30 you get up, you make your bed and then you do your exercise. You are creating habit chains. You get up and the very next thing that you're doing is you're chaining. When I get up out of bed, I make my bed. And so every night when you go home, your bed is in order, your house is in order. The same thing happens with like when I was saying about eating at lunch and going for a walk. That's chaining. Okay, it's lunchtime. I'm going to go for a little 15-20 minute walk. You can also do that with any type. Like let's say you have a bad habit. Let's say your habit is you come home and you watch TV after work and you always promise yourself you're only going to watch one episode of something and you end up watching 5 hours and you eat potato chips for dinner.
Yeah.
People have been, this happens. This is normal. I
Yeah.
definitely did it
I
in
agree.
before I was, yeah, before I was working on taking care of myself. So what if you took that time that we think is no time at all and you just go for 5 minutes? For just 5 minutes, I'm going to do something for myself. Either I'm going to look up an easy recipe and then I'm going to put it away. And then in a week, I'll make the recipe. Or I'm going to do 3 squats. And if you can't do 3 squats, do 3 push ups against the wall. And then I'm going to sit down and I'm going to watch my TV show. And you will see that you can actually start growing things just by chaining a good habit to a bad habit.
Exactly. And the other things, special things that we have, and like drinking water to me is important as well. And so what I do, and as a habit, the first thing that I do when I get up, before I have coffee or anything else, I have a glass full of water. Drink the
Mm-hmm.
whole glass full. It works for me. It's part of what I do,
Mm-hmm.
and so developing those habits are important. So we do as you do. We have a couple of doggies, that on the weekends in particular we go walk for probably 30, 40 minutes with our dogs in the dog park, and that's how. And then we walk fairly firmly,
Mm-hmm.
not wandering and up, but so get our heart rate up, and do those kind of things and incorporate those into your life. Certain things that are healthy and makes you fit, and then it creates a habit that becomes part of your life.
Yes. And I'm also a fan of the drink water. I get up, I drink water, then I do everything else. And it's just a nice way to get 8 ounces in right away. And then
Exactly.
you're not thinking about it. You don't think, should I have water? Should I get up? Should I break
No,
this task that I'm in the doing in the middle of the morning? No, it's already there. It happens. It's automatic. You don't think about it and you feel better. And it's easy. These little tiny habits are so easy. And then you can be as vibrant as 84-year-old John Brink, who is, you don't have to be a bodybuilder, but you can be that vibrant. It's
exactly.
possible for all of us.
Yeah. So, uh, very interesting, Elizabeth. So the other thing I was going to ask you is that for our guests listening
Mhm.
around the world is saying homesteader. What is a homesteader?
That's a really good question. So let's back up to what a traditional homesteader was. Back around 1862, there were a number of homesteading acts in the United States government. And the federal government granted 270 million acres of land, of government land, to private owners. In some cases, it was just the rich getting richer. But in a few cases, there were people that really did get the 40 acres and a mule. And so when we look at shows like Little House on the Prairie, which was really big in the 70s and 80s, and you see these pioneer people with homemade clothes and a pitchfork, and they're completely off grid. There wasn't even electricity back then, and there's not a neighbor for miles. That's what we originally thought of as homesteading. Well, now homesteading is a way of life. It's an intentional way of life. It's hearkening back to traditional medicine, traditional foods, and in a lot of cases, those traditional foods were actually more vibrantly nutrient dense than the foods that we have now. There's not a lot of chemicals in them. They're not wrapped in plastic that's then going to affect your hormone level. And so, what our my book talks about is it helps busy people tackle the overwhelm of creating a sustainable, healthy lifestyle through tiny daily steps. And so homesteading has many, many spokes. Maybe it's reducing toxic load in your home, which sounds like, oh my gosh, reducing toxic load. What does that mean? That means like not putting your leftovers in very thin plastic containers, putting them in mason jars. It sounds like creating your own dishwashing detergent, which is super easy. Taking your fruit scraps and making cleaning vinegar. That's how I clean my bathroom, with homemade vinegar. So you're closing a lot of loops, but you can decide. For example, a lot of people are like, "Oh, homesteading. Well, I can't wait to get my sourdough. How do you do your sourdough?" And I don't do sourdough. I have a baker at the farmer's market that does 48-hour ferment in a local sourdough, and that's enough for me. So you pick your spokes. I like growing food. It feels really good. And I like growing it in a place that seems like it's impossible to grow. If you come to my house, you will see that in my driveway, there are blackberries growing in my driveway. I love that I've used concrete to make an incredible berry bush. So this is very, very possible even in the smallest of places.
So if you think, if I think about homesteading, it was
Yeah.
something that was done, as you already said, in the mid 1800s in the
Yeah.
United States, same in Canada,
Mm.
likely in and around. It was usually
Mm-hmm.
640 acres that somebody would get as a parcel, and then they were pretty much on their own in terms of what they did with it. It was, in a lot of cases, they had to cultivate that property into something that became their life, really, as they went forward. But they had to create their own food. They had to do all those things themselves, and that's why I like your homesteader mindset. And maybe just show us. Is the book right behind you there, or?
It is, but I have another copy right here.
Okay, so and so build a sustainability life wherever
Wherever
you
you are.
are,
Mm-hmm.
and so is it available on Amazon and all the major distribution areas?
That's right. It's available on Amazon or wherever you get wherever you buy your books. And also, I have a gift for your listeners if they're interested. I have a habit stacker that you can print out, and it also gives 3 key steps to creating what we were talking about, creating these habits that can change your life, but they're little tiny habits.
Right.
And you can get that at my website. Would you like me to give you the link now?
Yes, sure.
Okay, it's www.createwellnessproject/gift, GIFT.
Okay, so now the other part is that I'm an author as well, and
Mm.
writing books is not easy. So and
No, it's not.
and so how long ago did you start it, and when did you complete it? And like for me, the first book that I wrote, a lot of people said to me, "Hey John, you had such an interesting life, you should write a book about it." And so for about 20 years I started, stop, and then about 6 years ago or so I decided if I don't do it now, it will never happen. So this book here, Against All Odds, it took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to
Yes.
think about it, 2 years to write it, and I really enjoyed it. But it always involves a lot of things about it. What should the book size be? What should be?
Mm-hmm.
Should there be pictures? Should there be? What should be the font sizes? And what should be the title? How do you do marketing, distribution? All those things are a challenge. So tell us
There,
about, but how did you start it, and how did you obviously bring it to a successful conclusion that is now in the marketplace and ready for people to from around the world to buy, right?
this is such a great question, John, because a lot of people that I speak to aren't authors, and so it's this big mystery. And so people think it's really difficult. I would say the writing, when you're writing something from personal experience, you have the knowledge. And so you write it, you write the first bad draft, and then it's the revision and the editing and the proofreading and all the decisions after. And I think for the first book is the most difficult. I wrote a book that I did not publish, and it took me 7 years.
Yeah,
And then I decided that's not the book that I'm ready to come out with yet. This is the book that I want to come out with. And this book took me maybe 6 months to write, but then it took me another year and a half, 2 years just to get through the process of rewrites and editing and proofreading. And then also the imposter syndrome feelings, right? Who am I to write this book? Is this
yeah,
something important? Will this product be helpful to others?
yeah,
And so I think you can probably say the same thing. Now you've done 5 books now. So
yeah.
I'm hoping it gets easier after the first one. It doesn't? Is it still
Yes,
difficult?
it does. It brings me probably back to the book that you did, Homesteader.
Hmm.
Is myth. Is I believe the timing is always a question,
Yeah.
and Homesteader Mindset is that timing is, in my opinion, impeccable because more and more people, because of podcasting, like what we are doing, you're doing, I'm doing, and it is more and more on the minds of people in terms of health and
Yeah.
fitness that it is very, very important to understand your body and the food that you eat. And it comes to your book, Homesteader Mindset, is very, very critical, very important. The other one that you did initially,
Hmm.
the way I feel that you're still thinking about releasing that potentially as well.
Yes, I think that's probably going to be like my third or fourth book. I think the next book might be something in terms of healing chronic pain naturally, because I do it in the clinic often. I help patients heal their chronic pain, but I think people don't realize how easy it is to do. And gosh, wouldn't it be great if even just 40% of all people that have chronic pain were able to rid themselves of it through nutritional steps and lifestyle changes? Imagine what the world would be like if we had. What I realize is that when I was young in my clinic initially, I the first thing that surprised me was how much internal pain that people are walking around with, and they're not talking about it. Like we just put on a stoic face. But
Yeah,
and the second thing that I realized is that there were quite a few people that would come in, and they would be what I would label as a jerk. Like they were mean, they were abrasive, they were short, and they were short tempered, and they were just mean. And once they were out of pain, it was like taking the thorn out of the lion's paw. And suddenly there were these loving, glowing folks that, of course, thought I was incredible because they had been in this debilitating pain for years and years and years. Pain, chronic pain and chronic illness wrecks families, wrecks lives. And when we realize that it's very possible, like if there's one thing that I want people to take away from in this episode is that you are you are capable of change. You are capable of extraordinary change with little tiny steps, and you are capable of healing 100%. And
correct.
once you just say that to yourself, then you have the chance to actually create that change and just keep looking. Buy my book, buy some of your books are all about change. Like buy those books, teach yourself, and then use that inspiration to create routines.
And always remember your body wants to be healthy. It
Yes.
wants to be healthy and
It
fit.
really does. It
Yeah,
really truly does. And if it's not, it's a sign. It's a cry for help. If you wake up
exactly.
every morning with a headache, that is a cry for help. Your body is saying something is not working. And a lot of times it has to do with the gut microbiome, because it's amazing what your body can do once you get some healthy gut microbiome. But it's not your body's disobeying or fighting back. And I don't even think when people say I have to battle illness, it's like, no, you need to harness your power, your actual innate healing power. That's what you need to do. The battle takes care of itself.
Now, the other part that is interesting, just talking about book writing, and
Hmm.
your topics are very timely. Timing is everything. And this book, Homesteader Mindset, is, and chronic pain or pain related is also very, very timely, in my opinion. The other part that I believe is something that is important is that people ask me about writing books, why and how, is I'm first and foremost, I'm a storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
That's who I am. And that's what I do in my books. And all the books that I do are relating to all of that in a way. And so the next one that I'm doing is about you can, and
Mm.
is saying that virtually everything is possible once you decide, and it lays also on the foundation of the things that you do is,
Mm-hmm.
and write about, is that understanding it first and foremost, and knowing that the body wants to be healthy and fit, and then also understanding that medicine has become big business,
Yes.
as well as food is,
Yes.
and creating that need for either medicine, where people have hands full of medicine they take and stay on, and in some cases, I'm not a doc, or haven't, just from experience, that a lot of it is toxic to your bodies and not helpful. And I believe we have to be aware of that. And the more we understand it by reading, and in your case, writing about it, because your experience has been homesteader mindset, is important in terms of what did we used to do in terms of
Mm-hmm.
understanding and doing all the things that we did as a lifestyle. And then the other one is chronic pain, which is so foundational to a lot of people that live miserable lives
Yes.
because of chronic pain that they have accepted, for all intents and purposes, as that's who it is,
Yeah.
and then become not very pleasant to be around, and not fully understanding that this is something that is changeable. And I believe that would be a very, very large market for that. Now, the other part about it, I was going to ask you about writing. Do you doing audio as well of the books that, or the book that you did, and the other ones that you're planning?
Yeah, not yet. It's a bit of an investment, so I think I'm going to wait on that, but I would love to do that. I know that there are some ways that you can have less of an investment where it's AI generated, and it sounds fairly good on Audible. And I know that that's how, like, I'm a reader. I'm avid reader. I have stacks of books all the time reading, but that's not for everyone. A lot of people are doing habit stacking on their commute to work. They're listening to a book on audio. And so I haven't yet done that, but it's in my sphere of vision. Like, yes, this is something that I want to do eventually. Do you have yours on audio
I
already?
do.
Smart.
Not the fifth one. The
Hmm.
fifth one is coming out in July,
Oh, wow.
and so and this one is about communication skills. And
Hmm.
so, and billionaire is saying what made them successful, which were some of the critical underlying parts, and that became being an effective and communicator. And so without that, they would have not got to where they are. And that's why I wrote that book, because communication skills, in my mind, very, very critical. Now, for
Essential.
me, is
Yeah.
I'm also, as you likely know, my second book is that academically I was not a success story. I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times in Holland. And then they said to my parents, who were beautiful people, they said, what are you going to do with this guy? And some people said, send him to the mentally challenged school. And
Wow.
fortunately, they said, no, we're not going to do that. So I started working in a furniture factory at the time that I was 12 and a half years old. And it took
Wow.
me, I always knew I was just as smart as the others that
Mhm.
went on to college and university. And I became a laborer. I'm proud of that today, but then I was kind of looked down on. But I always looked at it as, we were liberated during the Second World War in 1945 by the Canadian Army, which made
Mhm.
such an impression on me
Mm.
that I always knew my dream was to go to Canada, the land of my heroes. And
Mm.
then the other dream is to build my own lumber mill. But it took me, after I came here in 1965, and it took me 32 years until I got a diagnosis for ADHD.
Mhm.
And I had never even heard of it in my life. And I believe that the more I found out about ADHD, the more I believed that it is a superpower. And
Yeah.
so I wrote a book about that.
Wow.
ADHD Unlocked. And, and, and so now a lot of people say to me, how do you do all the things that you're doing? There you got, not bragging about it, 10 different companies, you're writing books and you do all this other thing.
Yeah.
You're a speaker and a presenter, and then at the same time you write all the books. How do you do it? And I
Mm.
say, ADHD, it's a superpower. That's how I do it.
Yeah, and I think that's a beautiful mission to a beautiful mission statement to give to others, that this can be a superpower, like our supposed defects that make us not fit into what the societal norms are, which is sit in a chair for 8 hours a day as a child and then become an adult that sits in a chair for 12 hours a day. Like that's not the way the human brain or body is supposed to be. We're
No.
supposed to move, and a lot of with ADHD, a lot of the beautiful parts about it is moving your body, allowing these kids to move their bodies. And also they see things differently because you're not able to communicate in the same way. You are much more creative. You're a man of creative solutions, and that makes a huge difference. I would say that in terms of your communication book, there are two things that I think really help people be truly wealthy. One is money management, not so much money creation. I see a lot of people that make a lot of money and then just pitter it away, but money management where you can make little, hang on to it, and then eventually have a good, stable nest egg. And the second is communication. If you are a solid communicator in whatever authentic way is for you, I'm going to communicate differently than you are, John, and the audience members will communicate differently. But when you harness your authentic creative voice, you are that is a gold mine, being able to communicate thoroughly and then receiving help and wellness and giving help and wellness and getting these collaborations that are quite remarkable. It all boils down to active communication.
I agree with that, Elizabeth. It took me a long time to get there. And the
Mm,
challenge that I have is, who am I? And
mm,
it was not until I really was diagnosed with ADHD that I understood that better. And then the other challenge has been for me coming from the Second World War, going through a difficult post war period in Holland.
mhm,
Then obviously we're not successful academically.
mhm,
I did not have the confidence that I could have and should have had until even when I was successful already in Canada and build lumber mills and all the other kind of things. And people said, "You're so successful." I didn't feel that way,
mm,
but until I was able to improve my communication skills, I understood ADHD, and then came to peace about it, and then felt I had to communicate about that much more in my books and
mm,
then in podcasting. And podcasting is an amazing vehicle that is still at its infancy in around the world, but it is the new media, in my
It is.
opinion,
I agree.
that reaches millions and millions of people, and I see that as my next goal is to get to a platform, and
Mm,
but I'm approaching, and I'm not bragging about it, but I am proud of it. Close to 1 million subscribers on YouTube, which is really amazing. That the communication channels around the world that are watching international podcasting. It's amazing.
it is amazing. And I will say two things on that. Firstly, your generosity to be sharing this platform with others like me is inspiring, and I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful for your honest, kind, compassionate approach to allowing other people to have a voice. And then secondly, we need more grown-ups in the media. We need more grown-ups in podcasting. And so my favorite population in my patient population was senior citizens, and because they have the wisdom of many years of experience. And so the fact that you are giving your voice to us so that people all over the world of all ages can learn from your wisdom and your life experience, this is something that we're missing out of. We don't have enough grandparents in the world that have this wisdom and experience and are willing to able to communicate it. So I thank you on many fronts.
Elizabeth, it was a privilege and a pleasure, to have this podcast with you. I'm going to send you my books, and
Really?
yeah, I am. I'm going to sign them for you, and
Wow.
then let's make sure we stay in touch. And especially, I'm going to say, I mentioned to Scott to stay in touch with you maybe 6 months from now when you're working on your other book, which you should, because that is another one. Chronic pain issues is something else that I believe is one of those books that fall into the category of Homesteader Mindset, that deals again with foundational issues that people have and can find ways of dealing with. And I believe that's very important. And I admire your candid conversation and sharing with us your life. And Chris, your valuable partner as well.
Thank you.
So it was a pleasure. Take care, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Bye, John.
Bye bye.